Okay, so for this project, we're going to be focusing on scaling and photo restoration techniques. I'm going to jump into Photopea, so let me bounce over here, and we're going to go to New Project. And what we're going to be doing is restoring an old photograph from my grandfather's photo collection from when he fought in the Pacific during World War II. So from the default sets right here, we're going to go over to Photo, and we're going to choose 5:7, but we're going to swap the width and the height. We want it to be a landscape orientation. Notice right here the DPI dots per inch is 300. We want the background to be white. We're going to click Create. So that'll give us a canvas to work in. I'm actually going to press Option and scroll out just a little bit, and you'll see why in just a second right here. I could also press Control minus or Control plus. I want to have a little bit of workspace to deal with right here. So the next thing I'm going to do is go to File, and I'm going to go to Open and Place. And so this is going to add an asset into our canvas that is the side that we want it to be. So I'm going to go to my graphics folder, and I've already downloaded the Ward McFadden .jpg image like so, and I'm going to click Open. So you're going to see that this image is actually a little bit smaller in the 40s, I suppose. The sort of default consumer photographic print was not 5:7, and so this is actually going to be slightly off in terms of aspect ratio and size, but I'm going to use the Move tool right here, keyboard shortcut V. I'm going to click the Transform controls right here, and I'm going to hold Shift and grab from the corner, and I'm going to resize this so that it is as tall as my canvas. Now notice right here, I'm holding Shift to hold the aspect ratio, so it's getting proportionately wider and taller. And then I'm just going to scoot this over towards the middle like so. And then I'm going to check that I am confirming the transform and the move. And so now you'll see that I have this image in my document right here. You'll see a little icon right here. That's indicating that it is a smart object. We're going to get rid of that in just a second, but first I'm going to turn off the transform tools. All right, now that I have scaled this to be a modern size that I could get printed at, let's say, a Walgreens or a Costco or wherever you get your photos developed, I'm going to duplicate this layer like we did in a previous project. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to make changes to this, and I'm going to do this less destructively. There's no way to avoid permanently changing the pixels, but I can keep the starting point preserved as a layer that I can reference later. Now I'm going to right click on this layer, and I'm going to go to rasterize. And you won't see any difference, but it's going to allow you to use tools that you couldn't use if this wasn't rasterized. So what we're going to do is restore all of the scratches and dings and nicks that are part of this image. And so I'm going to zoom in on my old grandfather's chin right here. You can sort of get a closer look. There's this little white speck right here. First, we're going to look at the clone stamp tool, which you'll find right here. And the keyboard shortcut is the letter S. And it works by, first, you would press the Alt key to select a part of the image that you want to reproduce. So I'm going to click Alt and then click on his eyeball. And I'm going to make my brush a little bit larger, and I'm going to make it fuzzier as well. And what you'll see is that the way that this works is it samples the part that you clicked on and it reproduces it elsewhere. So now I can just sort of create a second version of my grandfather, and now it looks like he's sort of daydreaming about himself. So this obviously isn't restoring the photo, it's just doing like a weird, design. So I'm gonna undo that, so I can press Control Z, or I can step back in my history panel. And now I'm going to make my brush size a little bit smaller, and I'm going to zoom in right on this speck right here, and I'm going to press Alt again, and I'm going to sample near the image, and then I'm going to click right here. And so the textures match up and sort of seamlessly fixes it. I can do the same right here where I sample this sort of shadowy area, and I can fix that little white speck that is there as well. And so that is the first restoration technique, the clone stamp tool. Next, I want to go to this area right here, where by default you're going to see a little band-aid with a little plus sign. We want to go to the patch tool. So the patch tool looks like, I don't know if you were to sew a patch on a pair of holy blue jeans. And the way that it works, notice right here, I've got my rasterized layer selected. I'm going to make a selection around the area that's damaged, and then you'll see these little marching ants show up, and I'm going to drag it into an area that looks like it's supposed to. And if I go to select, deselect, I can hide those lines. So I'm just going to sort of drag a little selection around the area that's damaged, and then pull it into the area that needs, pull it into an area that looks like how it should look. And so you can see as I go through here and I grab these little white specks that are dust that the scanner picked up, I can clean this up. I can restore this back to how it probably looked once my grandfather got these images developed. All right, now the third and final technique that we're going to use is the sort of like the smartest tool. It requires the least steps on your part, and it's the spot healing brush tool. And basically what it does is it allows you to simply just paint over the area that's damaged, and then the application just sort of looks around and figures out what it's supposed to look like, and it cleans it up. And so what I'm going to do is just sort of go through and I'm going to spot heal all of the damaged areas like so, and the application is just going to sort of clean it up. So depending upon where you are creating corrections, you might have to use a combination of all three techniques. But by doing this, you can take your picture and you can turn it from what was originally sort of a damaged, sort of old, grungy, dusty, creased, crinkled, creased image, and you can take it from this to this. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add an adjustment layer, because whether you know it or not, there are actually some colors that came in because while this was a grayscale black and white photo, it scanned in full color. If I click right here on my eyedropper tool and then I click, let's say in this area here, if I open up and see what color that is, and let me use my color picker here. So if I click, in various spots here, there's actually shades of blue. So you can see that it's a very desaturated shade of sort of aqua blue right here. Right in here, you can see it's shades of red. And so what I want to do is I want to pull out all of the color from this, because even though it looks grayscale, it might print with like little hints of those colors that would sort of ruin the actual photo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Layer, I'm going to go to New Adjustment Layer, and I'm going to go to Hue Saturation, and I'm going to pull out all of the saturation. I bring this down to -100, and now it's just truly, purely gray and grayscale. The next thing that I'm going to do is add one more adjustment layer, Layers, New Adjustment Layer. I'm going to go to Brightness and Contrast, and I'm going to increase the contrast. So the dark's going to be a little bit darker, the lights are going to be a little bit lighter, and I can lower the brightness just a little bit because it's a little bit overexposed. And so now, if I click on all of these layers, I'm going to hold Shift and click on all three of these layers and press Control G. I'm putting them into a folder. Now I can turn off the folder. See, from here to here, we've drastically improved this project. So now we're going to save this as a PSD, and we're going to export it as a JPG, and then we will be done with the project.